I know it is my lucky day.
Wonderful.
I knew that I wanted to make one, and which one, what would it be? And I was thinking about coming of age films a lot of young men and young women. Then just one night, I thought that wouldn't it be cool to put a kid in the middle of Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid and see him grow through those two different kind of iconic characters. The truth about their situation is that there's more information about those two guys than there is about other bandits from back in the day. Because he was a marshal and then he was a U.S. marshal, so you can track his movements like through that time period, where he was, when he was there, how long he was there, and what he was up to, because he was a law enforcement agent. So it grounds itself in more factual and less, mythology. That was kind of like Jesse James and all that stuff. And the same with Billy the Kid, because they hung in the same circles that Billy the Kid revisited his home a lot and stuck around places where he committed really bad crimes. And eventually that's why Garrett knew he could catch him. So those two stood out as I could really plot out the movie as factually as I could and put this boy's journey in there. That's why that's mostly the reason why I attracted. I also think that, Ethan had a lot to do with it too, because to me, he's like the perfect Pat Garrett.
I've done enough.
You're Billy the Kid.
There were things about the clothes that he wore and stuff that nobody for a long time has been able to figure out what the insignia was on his shirt in that one iconic photo of him leaning against the wall with his rifle. We figured it's a Merchant Marine shirt with an anchor on it with a rope snaked through it. Why he was wearing that, we have no idea, but he was wearing a Merchant Marine shirt. So we were able to replicate his real outfit from that photo that he's wearing at one point in the movie. No one's ever done that before. So to learn these kind of things that you would never think of, and there's 3 more pictures of him that have risen up, and one of them is him for sure, and the other 2 are kind of. But in the picture, he's standing behind Rudabaugh and some of his other gang members, and Garrett's even in the picture. But Billy's in the back, and he's doing this weird thing with his hands, they're caught in some kind of motion, and you could just see his personality for a second. Was he mercurial? Was he hard to get a hold of? Was he flighty? It's the first time, because everything else is kind of straight faced, but in this one, his hands are flipping around. And it's very interesting. So it gives you insight to maybe he's more than just what we think he was,
It matters the story they tell when you're gone.
The way he devised catching criminals, bringing them in, traveling through the country, and bringing them from jailhouse to jailhouse until their final destination, to bringing people in alive, to go to court and stuff like that. Those things, those actual ways of doing things are actually still, a lot of it is still the way that marshals do it today. Those were the guys that were inventing that at the time. And the idea of that, about the beginnings of law enforcement, is not something that you think of very often and how it comes about, but it really comes about through practicality and environment. And, marshals today will tell you that a lot of the stuff that they still do comes from back in the day. So he was a very smart, very methodical cat,
Weapons! All the same to you, Pat. I'm fine right here. We just want Bonnie.
I did use this kind of spirit film, which was David Lean's black and white Oliver Twist, because his version of Oliver Twist is a very big version, but it's done in a very small, contained way. There's a lot of interiors, and the sets are very small, but the shots and the way he depicted violence in it, I thought was going to be helpful, and it was. It was, especially with Matthew Lloyd, our DP, and the actors. I wanted them to understand that we were going to try to make a big story in a small way.
You really think I'm like you?
The reason why Jake ended up in the movie is because of the way he thinks as a young man, and I put him through an exercise, a little acting exercise, to see if he could compartmentalize an emotion and dialogue and let them run simultaneously. and he was amazing, like truly, amazing. And so I knew that that was going to be half the battle, that he understood what he's supposed to be doing, and now the practicalities just would be the thing that I would have to deal with, like hitting your mark and not hiding your eyes when you get upset, to keep your face up, because he would perform down here, and in a movie, if you perform down there, you're not telling the story. So my daughter was there too, Layla George, who plays his sister, and she's a very good actress too. And so he had her, and he had Ethan, and he had Chris, and Dane DeHaan, and they're all these super nice guys. So we got to set an example on a daily basis for him. And he would rise to it every day, knowing that he had to come in some days and do like 3 really difficult scenes, whether they were difficult because it was a shot that was very involved, or because of what his character was going through, And he did it with flying colors.
Did you think you could run from me?
His humanity is on a really, high level, and he carries around a humility that not all guys in his position do. And that's very impressive, to maintain that through the kind of thing that he's gone through in the last few years. So I always, when I first started talking to him about acting, this is when we did Jurassic World together a long time ago, I would say to him, I'd really like to coach you through a bad dude. You have that side in you. And I think it would be really exciting, So, I just said to him one day, jump a few years later, there's this part in this movie I think that you should play. You should read it. And he was in the middle of, I think, the Avengers, the last Avengers movie. And he said, okay. And he showed up for 5 days, full on, And we shot the shit out of it for 5 days, and he was awesome. And Chris just lit up, like he entered this kind of other zone of himself, and we were all like, whoa, this is okay, we've tapped in, this is good, this is gonna work. He's like definitely a shithead.
No one has to die today.
Well, ain't that one of life's harsh realities?
He has this romanticized way of performing characters. And I've always thought of Ethan as a kind of poet, and I wanted Garrett to have some of that. And so we worked against it, but he had to have it. And so I would tell Ethan, when we were doing stuff, we would talk very quietly together while the camera was rolling sometimes, and we would work against his kind of poetry, knowing that it's going to be there because it's just part of who he is. And that's why he had to do it in my eyes, because I wanted the boy to have that kind of vision of him, of this kind of authority, but a bit of a romantic authority,
Now hold on, one more step and it will be your last!
I knew that whoever I brought in for Billy would have to have the talent and the intellect to be able to bring in his version of what I wanted, but at the same time let me intrude without it throwing him off. And so I had these conversations with him, and I could just tell without asking him straight out what kind of a person he was, And he fit in perfectly to the gang. By the second day of shooting, we were all just a band of brothers and sisters.